Hugo Strange helped unleash the full power of the Scarecrow on Gotham City, but neither him or Batman could have foreseen how terribly wrong that would result in things for Hugo. What's up, guys, and welcome to the tavern. As you can see here on Corleone Comics, I'm a small channel,
but there's a lot of potential for aggressive expansion. So which of you fine gentlemen would like to join our team?
So be sure to like and subscribe because that really gives me the motivation to keep bringing you stories like this. I typically make shorts, but I'd like to make more long-form videos, so hopefully this one does well. Batman Terror is a psychological thriller that leaves Batman struggling to keep up with the case the whole way through. Now, before we get into the story, here's a brief recap of its prequel, Batman Prey, which we covered on this channel a while ago. Basically, Hugo Strange psychologically profiled Batman and found him out to be Bruce Wayne, and then hypnotized a cop into becoming a brutal vigilante known as the Night Scourge. All this to frame Batman for murder, tear down his image, and then break into Wayne Mansion to make him relive the trauma of his parents' death. The story ended with Hugo Strange being shot upon jumping into the river, but obviously he survived.
Now lock in.
Cause it's story time. A man in a cape and cowl with pointed ears silently enters a tall manor overlooking Gotham Harbor, and then proceeds to stab him in his sleep. Before he leaves, he paints a bat on the wall in the victim's blood, and then says out loud that this is all about revenge, because no one gets away with killing Hugo freaking Strange. We cut over to Chinatown where the Caped Crusader is testing some new gadgets out on an arms deal, efficiently and methodically taking down all parties, starting with the buyers and then cleaning up with the sellers. The last guys try to flee, but Batman came prepared with his own speedboat, and this thing is sweet, kinda like a baby version of the '89 Batplane, which also comes equipped with flamethrowers, which is kind of overkill but really sets the tone. Batman is then summoned to the GCPD roof by Gordon where they discuss the murder of the old man from earlier. They both waste no time coming to the conclusion that this is Hugo Strange back from his supposed death and pulling another frame job on Batman. Batman is convinced this is the same game. Destroy the Bat and the man. He knows Hugo is obsessed with him because he identifies with him, but that to prove his superior intellect, he will shatter Batman's mind before destroying his body. Gordon, however, is pretty adamant that there's more to this than that, but he leaves us with that thought. We then find Hugo holed up in a creepy little shack doing something worse than talking to himself. He's talking to his life-size goon doll, which he still has from the last story and is still just as obsessed with, dressed up to resemble Batman with a sexy lingerie twist. And this creep mother effer even goes as far as to say he's gonna get his revenge by striking from the sexy shadows, whatever that means. Batman and Gordon are now discussing the return of Catwoman, who according to Gordon is still silently penetrating things. His words, not mine. And as far as Legends of the Dark Knight continuity goes, I believe this will only be Batman's second run-in with Catwoman. Hugo Strange is deep into the next phase of his plan. He's come up with a fake alias and rejoined the Arkham staff with a wig. They even let him pick his first patient, who turns out to be Jonathan Crane, the Scarecrow. And this guy is defeated. His whole persona was embodying and becoming fear. But the way he sees it, Batman is the true master. This guy is terrified of Batman. So Hugo's going to run him through some exercises to remind him that he is the sinister Scarecrow, the true master of fear, and he fears no one. As a boy, Jonathan Crane was bullied and tormented by other kids for being different, and as a release, he would turn around and take that frustration out on scaring birds. When he was in high school, a girl wanted to be alone with him at a Halloween party. And as they walked down the stairs to the basement, the scent of her perfume pulled him in and made his palms sweat. But instead of the kiss he thought he was going to get, she led him into a trap sprung by her boyfriend that scared the daylight out of Jonathan. So he ran out of that party and ran until that terror turned to rage. In college, Jonathan studied chemistry and psychology, and as a graduation gift to himself, he combined the two studies by creating his first batch of fear toxin. which he would then use to scare his professor to death and then apply for his job, which he later got fired from. Jonathan would use this final stressor to reinvent himself into the Scarecrow and kill the dean of the college. Scarecrow would then go on to get revenge on all his childhood bullies and wouldn't feel fear again until he crossed paths with the biggest bully of them all. A creature of darkness, a true master of fear. The Bat. Crane's words, not mine. But before he could get too carried away, Hugo reminds him who he is, and slips him a handful of straw before going home for the night. The story takes us over to Batman, who has now finally caught up with Catwoman, who turns out to be more feral than he remembers, and is able to slip away with little effort. The next day, Hugo uses hypnosis on an Arkham guard to walk out of the front gate with Jonathan Crane. Batman still hasn't caught up to Hugo's game, and Gordon can't let his theory on the victim rest. Between the bat symbol written in blood and the fact that the victim was a former patient of Hugo Strange, there must be more to the case other than revenge. While they play catch-up, Hugo and Crane set up shop in the earlier victim's estate, where Hugo gifts Crane a bottle of experimental hallucinogen, which Hugo states that if mixed with fear toxin would result in a vividly realistic hallucination of the victim's greatest fear, a King Hell hallucination. But just remember, Jonathan, you are a guest in this house, and I expect you to behave like a gentleman, so confine yourself to this room and stay away from my lady. Bruce gets back to the cave, but before he can eat dinner for once, he's struck by a case of deja vu, because Alfred has once again been tied up, and Hugo has left a message for Bruce in the form of a mannequin resembling Strange himself, accompanied by a tape recorder that talks to Bruce, stating he's late for dinner. And the dish to be served is a dead bat with a knife driven through its wing. Back at the victim's manor, Crane is finished cooking up in the lab, and all he needs now is a saw to cut a hole in the floor for later. And Hugo is having another one-sided conversation with his doll about how Crane is the perfect way to strike at Batman this time. And the thought turns him on so much, he starts licking her lips. Good God, I just can't with this man. But as Strange drifts off to sleep, Scarecrow shatters a vial of fear toxin on his face because Strange did his job too well. He reintegrated Crane's split personalities, and the Scarecrow refuses to be anybody's pawn. Hugo Strange is zonked out of his mind on the freshly concocted Fear Gas 2.0. He tried to run away, but this is exactly what Scarecrow wants as he pokes at his fragile ego, asking him what he fears most. Hugo inevitably steps right into the hole Crane prepared for him and falls to the bottom floor, impaling himself on a rusty spike laid out for him in advance. Hugo Strange is dead, and renovations will be made to the house. Because you see, dear baldy deadhead, there are still big bullies at large, a lot of creeps who tormented me in the past. And now that I've mastered fear, this will make for the perfect place to deliver punishment. A true house of horrors to host my victims, one by squealing one. But first, Scarecrow has to deal with the Bat. So Catwoman breaks into a warehouse looking for priceless jades, but is instead met with an explosion of fear gas. She comes to later, woken up by the flash of a camera, and Scarecrow has an ultimatum. Help me lay a trap for Batman, or I release your unmasked photos to the police. So 2 nights later, the bat signal is turned on, and Batman is already there before Gordon. Because this is a trap sprung on by Catwoman. She's the one who lit the signal. Batman gives chase, but Catwoman is already 10 steps ahead, and she's having fun with this. Batman is holding back because he's infatuated with her, and though he doesn't know it, she does. She boasts that he wants her. So as they tussle, she's able to flip him off and lead him to the Monarch Theater where his parents died. This is Scarecrow's game now. He has one of his former school bullies hanging upside down by a rope in the alley, and before Batman can react, a scythe comes down separating his neck from his head, flooding the street with blood. Scarecrow strikes at Batman while he's still off his game, and though he's a competent enough fighter, he still has no idea what's going on. He's caught off guard by the revelation that this started as a Hugo Strange mystery, but it's now Scarecrow's world. Before Batman can process Hugo Strange's death, Scarecrow is standing over him with the scythe. But before he can deliver the finishing blow, Catwoman yanks it out of his hand with her whip. She couldn't in good faith let it go this far. This is already more than she knew she was getting herself into. Scarecrow retreats, making sure Catwoman knows she's next, and she gives Batman a sincere apology, right before knocking him out cold. But crazy as it is, all Bruce can think as he drifts off to sleep is how she was right. He wants her. He wants her more than life. Batman starts to come to when Catwoman is trying to remove his mask. He's able to hold her off, but she's threatening the claws, while also leaning in and kissing his lips. They have a pretty intimate conversation, to say the least. She swears Hugo Strange had nothing to do with this because Batman still can't believe he's dead when he so obviously started this. But he lets her take off anyway since he's too weak to chase. Batman checks in with Gordon and they're putting at least some pieces together at this point. They know Strange used an alias to spring Scarecrow from Arkham. At dawn, Bruce visits his parents' grave and pleads for forgiveness. He knows they wouldn't like the idea of their deaths inspiring him to become Batman. This is truly a gut-wrenching Bruce Wayne moment. We all know his tragedy, but his words here are so impactful. Your lives touched me all too briefly, but I will feel your deaths forever. I'm determined to find some purpose in your purposeless deaths, and I'm sorry because that's all I can think to do. Later on, Bruce tells Alfred he wants to double donations to the Wayne Foundation, but despite what Alfred thinks, that doesn't mean he won't be going out tonight to beat the dog shit out of freaks like Scarecrow and the Joker. They're the weird ones, as he puts it. No charity can help their case. They must be dealt with by the bat. Back at Scarecrow's mansion, a man and a half-dressed woman wake up with no idea where they are, but they do recognize each other from high school. That's when Scarecrow's voice comes to taunt his childhood bullies, accompanied by a mad dose of fear gas rupturing from the walls, and he enjoys every second of chasing them through the house with his scythe. Batman and Gordon are pretty caught up on the case, so they put surveillance on remaining classmates of Jonathan Crane. And Batman has a plan that involves shining a cat signal into the sky. Gordon's kind of taken aback by the rehashing of their shared kiss, which is downright hilarious. So he steps away because the rest of what goes on during this meeting he doesn't want to be privy to. Basically, Catwoman helps Batman secure Scarecrow, seeing as she owes him one, and he will lay off her for the time being. She describes the scenery, the sounds, and the ambiance of a remote location, but somehow, Batman still says that's not enough and has to rely on her having left a homing device at the manor, which makes him look downright incompetent as a detective, but anyway, moving on. Scarecrow's victims are locked in a room with spiders and snakes, which I imagine isn't pleasant when you're having a bad fear toxin trip. His fun is cut short though when he gets a proximity alert that the Batmobile is approaching the manor. But Batman doesn't know that Scarecrow knew about the homing device and has been expecting him. He's cooked. As Batman steps out of the Batmobile, he sees now that Gordon's hunch was right all along. This was about more than murder or revenge. Hugo Strange's initial victim was chosen accordingly, because this remotely located manor makes for the perfect haunted funhouse to break Batman psychologically for good. The perfect trap to end the game. Batman walks in and calls out for Scarecrow. The windows and doors seal shut with metal bars. The trap is sprung, and Batman's nose filters won't do him any good. From a random hole in the wall comes a swift-acting flèche dart carrying fear toxin. Boo. Batman is in a complete state of panic, fear toxin rushing through his veins, experiencing grotesque hallucinations. Batman can barely pick himself up, but somehow manages enough strength to scream right in Scarecrow's face, using his own fear to scare Crane from the room temporarily. Batman injects himself with a counter-agent for the toxin he came prepared with after studying Crane's newest dose earlier in the story. The only problem is it's going to take like 20 minutes to kick in, and in the meantime, despite being in and out of reality, he's able to free Scarecrow's victims from the room they're trapped in. He breaks the glass out of the nearest window and hoists them down with his rope. He tells them to run for help and to remember that what they're feeling now is exactly what they made Jonathan Crane feel like in high school. Batman slowly makes his way back through Scarecrow's house of horrors, his voice taunting Batman on a recorder the whole way through. Batman sets off a trap that springs a circular saw hurtling down on him from the ceiling. Then he runs into the closest room to evade being cut in half, where Hugo Strange's girlfriend doll starts talking to him. Is he imagining this? Has he truly lost it? The blood bat symbol Hugo left on the wall jumps off and splatters onto Batman's face. The doll turns into Hugo and tells Batman he knows who he is under the cowl. Scarecrow walks in on Batman talking to himself and tells him Hugo Strange is dead for a final time. He runs out of the room, getting Batman to chase him down the hall, where they both run into Catwoman. She showed up here to burn the photos Scarecrow took of her, and while she's throwing those in the fire, she pulls a torch from the flame and uses it to set the straw that makes up Scarecrow's costume on fire. This sends him again running out of the room screaming, but Batman can't just let him burn, so he follows him again slowly. Catwoman has set the whole house ablaze at this point, and as Scarecrow pats down the flames, Batman tells him his run is finished. Batman doesn't realize until it's too late, however, that he's stepping right where Scarecrow anticipated him to. Batman steps on a rug and falls through a hole in the floor down into Scarecrow's trap. But as Batman falls and Scarecrow laughs, a grapple shoots up from the darkness and pulls Scarecrow down with it. Batman lands on a switch plate that triggers all the exits to seal shut. The room starts flooding with water and the gas valves on the ceiling ignite into flame. Next to Batman lays Hugo Strange's corpse, and the truth finally sets in for him. Scarecrow starts beating Batman left and right in a fit of rage. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Him trapped here with Batman, sentenced to the same fate. If the water doesn't drown them from below, the flames will choke them from above. Batman starts dousing all the valves with water, forcing all the gas to collect. Hugo Strange's hand reaches up from the water and attacks Scarecrow, seemingly alive again. Scarecrow is panicking, but Batman has to keep working. A new flame comes down from the ceiling, igniting the collected gas and ruptures the whole basement in an explosion. Batman was able to use the water as insulation from the blast, but all the water rushes out of the basement, carrying them down into the river. Batman and Catwoman fish Scarecrow out of the river, but Hugo Strange is once again nowhere to be found. Catwoman comes on to Bruce, but he's not in the mood right now. He tells her next time he sees her, he's taking her in handcuffs. She tells him to go to hell, and he says he just did as he drags Scarecrow away, and the story ends. Terror is a Legends of the Dark Knight story arc, a series published in the 90s dedicated to telling stories from early in Batman's career. I've always taken to this series, but this story especially stands out. With pencils that boldly define Batman and Gotham's other characters, and colors that feel like reading an acid trip, this story psychologically bends Batman's mind to a point where he doesn't even believe the facts. Batman is 2 steps behind until the end, which gives its flowers to Scarecrow as a villain, and makes for an interesting plot that explores Bruce not always being the greatest detective everyone knows him as. We get to see it highlighted that Gordon had a hand in shaping him into the detective he would later become. Hugo Strange is downright unsettling, and once again we're left questioning what was real and what was imagined. Is Hugo Strange just immortal? I don't know, and I don't want to know, because my favorite Batman stories always leave something unresolved, forcing you to question what really happened, and it's all up for interpretation. Thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you're a Batman fanboy like me. Consider checking out my other videos, and I'll see you in the next one, 'cause you deserve cinema.